Alright folks, today we're diving deep into the sands of time to uncover the life of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt and the original drama queen in every sense of the word. Buckle up, it's about to get historically juicy. So Cleopatra the seventh Philopator was born in 69 BCE, and yes, we're going way back. Before Wi-Fi, before sliced bread, before people even agreed that the earth revolves around the sun. She was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which, fun fact, was of Macedonian Greek origin. That's right, Egypt's most famous queen wasn't even ethnically Egyptian. It's like finding out that the best sushi chef in the world is from Italy. Her family tree was more of a tangled vine. The Ptolemies had a tradition that makes modern family feuds look like playground squabbles. They practiced sibling marriage to keep the royal bloodline pure, which is a nice way of saying they didn't like mingling with outsiders, or anyone outside their immediate family, for that matter. It's like the royal version of no new friends, but taken to an uncomfortable extreme. Cleopatra was the third child of Ptolemy the 12th Auletes, also known as the flute player, not because he was musically gifted, but because he was about as effective at ruling as a broken recorder. When he wasn't busy emptying the treasury, he was cozying up to Rome to keep his shaky throne. This involved hefty bribes, which didn't exactly make him popular back home. Think of him as the ancient world's equivalent of that one friend who always borrows money and never pays it back. When Ptolemy the 12th shuffled off this mortal coil around 51 BCE, Cleopatra ascended to the throne at the ripe age of 18, but she wasn't ruling solo. She was supposed to co-rule with her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy the 13th, whom she was also expected to marry. Yes, you heard that right. Her little brother and husband-to-be. If that doesn't make Thanksgiving dinners awkward, I don't know what does. Cleopatra wasn't interested in sharing power, especially not with a preteen. She started omitting Ptolemy Zayi's name from official documents and even had her face minted on coins without his. This was the ancient equivalent of changing the Netflix password so your sibling can't use it. But her brother's advisors didn't take kindly to her power play. They orchestrated a coup and effectively kicked her out of Egypt. So there she was, 21 years old, dethroned, and exiled to the Syrian desert. Most people might consider a career change at this point. Maybe open a bakery or start a pottery class. Not Cleopatra. She was already plotting her comeback. Meanwhile, Julius Caesar, Rome's top dog and part-time playboy, arrived in Alexandria. He was there to collect debts owed by Cleopatra's late father and to settle the civil war between Cleopatra and her brother. Cleopatra saw this as her golden ticket back to power. But how to get an audience with Caesar when her brother's forces controlled the city? Enter the legendary carpet scene. According to Plutarch, she had herself smuggled into Caesar's quarters rolled up in a rug, or possibly a linen sack. Historians debate this, but let's stick with the rug for dramatic effect. Imagine unrolling a carpet in your living room and out pops a deposed queen. That's one way to make an impression. Today's equivalent would be showing up in someone's Zoom meeting uninvited and pitching your startup. Caesar was understandably intrigued. Whether it was her boldness, her intelligence, or perhaps the sheer novelty of someone using home furnishings as transportation, we may never know. What we do know is that they became allies in more ways than one. Cleopatra wasn't just about romance. She was securing military backing to reclaim her throne. With Caesar's support, Cleopatra faced off against her brother's forces in the Alexandrian War. After several months of siege and street fighting, Ptolemy the 13th tried to flee but drowned in the Nile. Accidents happen, especially when you're losing a civil war. Cleopatra regained the throne and, following tradition, married her even younger brother, Ptolemy the 14th, who was about 12 years old. It was less a marriage and more a legal formality. Think of it as updating the terms and conditions on your software. She also bore Caesar a son, Ptolemy the 15th, known as Caesarion, meaning Little Caesar. No word on whether he came with a side of breadsticks. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Rome plunged into chaos. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, aligned herself with Mark Antony, one of Caesar's top generals and a key player in Rome's power struggle. Their first meeting is the stuff of legend. Cleopatra sailed up the Cydnus River in a golden barge with purple sails, dressed as the goddess Aphrodite. It was less a casual meet and more an over-the-top theatrical production. Imagine scheduling a business meeting and the other person arrives on a yacht, dressed like a deity with a full marching band. Subtlety was not her strong suit. Mark Antony was captivated. The two became lovers, and Cleopatra bore him 3 children, twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and another son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. They formed both a romantic and political alliance, strengthening Cleopatra's position and giving Antony access to Egypt's vast resources. But back in Rome, Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted heir and Antony's rival, was not amused. He painted Cleopatra as a manipulative foreign queen who had bewitched Antony, leading him astray from his Roman duties. It was the ancient version of a smear campaign, complete with propaganda and public outrage. Tabloids would have had a field day. The tension culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, a massive naval confrontation off the coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra's forces faced off against Octavian's fleet. Things didn't go as planned. In the heat of battle, Cleopatra's ships retreated and Antony followed. Whether this was a strategic withdrawal or a moment of panic remains debated. Either way, it was a bad look. Defeated, they retreated to Egypt with Octavian hot on their heels. Facing inevitable capture, Antony received false news that Cleopatra had died. Distraught, he fell on his sword but didn't die immediately. In a twist of tragic irony, he was brought to Cleopatra's hiding place, where he died in her arms. Shakespeare couldn't have written it better. Oh wait, he did. Cleopatra was now alone, with Octavian closing in. Realizing that she would be paraded through Rome as a captive, she decided to take matters into her own hands. The popular story is that she allowed an asp, a venomous Egyptian cobra, to bite her, resulting in a relatively quick death. Other theories suggest poison or other means, but the snake story has a certain dramatic flair that's hard to beat. Her death marked the end of the Ptolemaic kingdom and the beginning of Roman rule over Egypt. Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor, ushering in a new era. Cleopatra's children were captured. Caesarion was executed, eliminating any threat to Octavian's claim to power. The fate of her children with Antony is less clear, but they were likely raised by Antony's Roman wife, Octavia. Yes, his Roman wife. The ancient world was complicated. So what's Cleopatra's legacy? Over the centuries, she's been depicted as a seductress who brought mighty men to their knees, a cunning politician who played empires against each other, and a tragic figure caught in the tides of history. The truth is likely a blend of all these. She was a woman who wielded immense power in a male-dominated world. Fluent in multiple languages, she was the first Ptolemaic ruler to learn Egyptian, endearing herself to her subjects. She wasn't just lounging on gilded sofas, feeding people grapes. She was managing an economy, overseeing trade, and implementing policies, all while navigating the treacherous politics of the era. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony weren't just romantic escapades. They were calculated alliances designed to secure her position and the independence of Egypt. She leveraged every asset at her disposal: intellect, charm, and resources to protect her kingdom. Yet, history often reduces her to a femme fatale stereotype. It's easier to attribute her influence to her beauty, rather than acknowledge her political savvy. But let's be real. You don't maintain power for nearly 3 decades in such a volatile environment without being exceptionally skilled. In popular culture, Cleopatra continues to fascinate. From Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra to modern films and novels, her story resonates as a tale of ambition, love, and tragedy. She's become a symbol of female empowerment, even if her methods were sometimes morally ambiguous. So what's the takeaway here? Cleopatra was a complex figure who defied the expectations of her time. She wasn't perfect. Far from it, but she was undeniably effective. She played the Game of Thrones long before it was a TV show, and although she ultimately lost, her name endures over 2 millennia later. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of one of history's most enigmatic figures, feel free to like the video and subscribe, or don't. After all, Cleopatra didn't wait for anyone's approval, and she still managed to make a lasting impression.